So what's the best package size for whiskey? Let's answer that. Did you ever walk the aisles of a store and wonder why maybe you only see primarily 750 milliliter packaging on whiskey products, and for that matter, all spirits here in the United States? Well, there's a really good reason behind that, and it's not because it's some sort of conspiracy by all the manufacturers. It's actually a TTB regulation here in the United States that's called Standards of Fill, and that's F-I-L-L, not P-H-I-L, which we all think there's some dude named Phil at the TTB that's just making shit up probably, right? It's possible, so I'm not gonna put it past that, and they're just laughing at us this whole time. But Standards of Fill, one of the things in that regulation says that when a producer goes to get their label approval, they have to state the size in which they're going to be producing that particular bottling or whatnot. And so up until December of 2020, there were only a limited number of sizes that were approved. There was 50 milliliter, also 100 milliliter, which I don't happen to have anything in that size, 200 milliliter, 375 milliliter, the usual aforementioned 750 milliliter, the 1 liter, which I don't happen to have any bottles of, and the 1.75 liter, AKA the handle. So in December 2020, as I mentioned a minute ago, sometime in the middle of the pandemic, the TTB did amend the Standards of Fill to allow other sizes. So yes, that probably catered a lot to the importers and things of that nature, but it also did allow for what was a kind of a tough market at that time, as long as you know, with glass and whatnot, for us to see some things hit the shelves here in the United States. Say Jack Daniel's actually had some products go in 700 milliliter bottles because they had a stock of that for their international, and they could actually turn it and move it here and help them make sure that their inventory kept moving. So there was some madness behind why I think we saw that change. With that change in 2022, the TTB approved 700 milliliter packaging, 720 milliliter packaging, 900 milliliter packaging, and 1.8 liter packaging. Again, a lot of that was to align with some of the international style packaging, but also was aligned with what maybe the manufacturers here in the United States had on hand too. So TTB did a nice job. They reacted fairly quickly, but we are stuck in kind of this weird spot in the market where producers can only put certain sizes out. So that got me thinking, do we have the right size packaging for the whiskey industry right now? Let's get into that a little bit more. You know, my first thought on this whole thing was we're so used to 750s, why even think about changing it? And I'll say this right up front. For your everyday run-of-the-mill, small batch, that type of product, I'm not here to argue that 750 is probably the wrong size. I actually think we probably have that right, but it really got me thinking about, in particular, the smaller sizes below 750. So let's leave out the 1 liters, the 1.75 liters, the newly approved 900 milliliters, those kinds of things, because I think those are simply just going to be a product of needing to have something at your bar where you're making cocktails, a lot of things of that nature. Probably lesser products that you're going to drink neat, though they could be drank neat. But when we look to something smaller than 750, we're saying, is there value in that for the consumer to actually have distilleries produce more of these? Now, let's get off the table right up front. There is a cost to these distilleries to have multiple bottle types. It is not cheap for them and may cause retooling in their bottling and capping and packaging processing line. So that notwithstanding, which certainly is a reality, let's move forward assuming that we're actually just saying as a consumer, what is it that we would like? So come back to this little guy, this little 50 milliliter. Look at this little Larceny small batch. It's adorable, right? Really not practical for home use though. Plus, price point on this, they really get you. And this is a plastic packaging, so less desirable. So for the purpose of discussion, I'm throwing the 50 milliliter out saying it wouldn't even be feasible. So next up, the 200 milliliter. And I happen to pick this one up at Peerless, and I'll turn it around here for you a second, let it refocus. This was an interesting idea for me. I'd seen 200 milliliters elsewhere, so it's not like this is a new concept, right? This was a way for them to stretch their distillery only double oak product for this year and single barrels. So as they're breaking single barrels down, they sell 200 milliliter packaging of them. And I thought this is quite an interesting and good use for a smaller package. Now inside here is just a little over 6 ounces. So you're not going to get too many pours off that, right? But I also thought like, hey, you know, price wise, Peerless, if you guys know anything about them. So when I go to buy a 750 at Peerless, it could be well over $100. And I didn't spend nearly that amount for this. And I can still re-enjoy this product. I thought that was a good use of a 200 milliliter packaging. Still don't think that widely we are going to expect to walk into Total Wine or whatever, Bevmo or whatever your retailer is, and expect to see distilleries start splitting their product down to 200 milliliters. Just not really practical, but maybe for like a distillery only type thing, sounds pretty good. So Gentleman Jack in a 375. You know, double mellowed, got some cult status too a little bit for some. 375, that's an interesting package type to me. That's where we start to think about, do some of these distilleries look at it and say, I have product that gets on shelf, and Gentleman Jack's gonna be on the shelf. It's not like it's gonna sell out all the time. I have products I want on the shelf, and I wanna make sure the consumer gets more opportunity to purchase them. This is where the category starts to get really interesting for me. This is our last option before 750 right now. We'll get back to that in just a second. I do feel like 375 start to put a place in the market where some distilleries may say it's more important for me to get more folks accessible to my product than less. But even then, I still don't feel like 375s as a broad market are there. Now, there is another application of 375s I think is absolutely genius. There have been a few that have done it, but I don't know of any currently actively doing it, and that is single barrel picks. I know that's probably gonna be met with some disagreement. I don't debate that because we all have different opinions on this. Buffalo Trace was one that I'm aware of recently with the Buffalo Trace line itself. Would put them into 375s. I understand that might have been a product of a bottle shortage or some sort of supply shortage, but I thought it was brilliant. I mean, you know, you're doubling your yield out of that barrel for the most part. Now, you're also doubling some glass costs and things. So you can't pass a 50% savings along to the consumer. I do understand that. And I think that whole idea of shrinkflation is what some people were terming that, where just because we're getting, you know, 50% less liquid means it should be 50% less cost, is a hard pill to swallow for the distilleries because they still have the glass costs in each bottle. They still have the cork costs in each bottle or the cap cost. So we have to think smartly about it as a consumer. We can't expect to be a dead 50% because then we might put these distilleries in quite a bind. The one thing that's changing potentially in May of 2023 is I'd love to see a 500 milliliter option. Now, I say it may be changing because the TTB is reconsidering how they do the standards of fill guidelines. Remember, they cover more than just spirits. What they're looking to do is they're looking to have a minimum size packaging for wine products and a maximum size packaging for distilled spirits. Meaning, in theory, if you want to go down to 30 milliliters because you want to make an advent calendar, you could do that as a distillery if they pass this. But if the TTB does make these changes to the standards of fill and does allow distilleries to actually go out and choose their packaging size, I think we have to seriously think about the 500 milliliter bottle as being more widely consumed and allowed for home use, because I feel like it actually provides us with that perfect amount to me. I know that's controversial. I know we have people that are honestly just saying this is how it's been, this is how it should always be. I respect your opinion. But I also look at this and say that I also want to see a situation where we're getting more bottles in the hands of the consumers, because the one thing I do know is no matter what you do with these, if it's a popular brand or popular bottle, there's going to be the fear of missing out, aka FOMO. And no matter what you do, whether it's 750 milliliters or 500 milliliters, there is a thing called fear of running out, and that's FORO. So it doesn't matter which packaging you have, you're going to have that either way. I just want to see a chance to get more bottles in the hands of consumers, and I think that's going to be a win for people. Now, again, as I mentioned, this could be at a cost to the distilleries they may not be willing to swallow, or it may have to be a business decision to switch wholly over to 500 milliliters, which, you know, that certainly has to weigh on each of their individual business plans. I don't know what to say about that, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. Obviously, for daily drinkers and small batches, things like that, it probably doesn't make much difference. But as we start to get out some of the limited release products or some of the products that maybe don't have as big a run as others, but are more regularly released products, it would be nice to have a third more of the stock on the shelves. But that's just my opinion. I'd really love to know what you think. Leave a comment below, and don't forget to watch one of the videos above, please. Until next time, cheers.